For the best prices and service on Pokemon TCG singles and products, check out ccgcastle.com and use promo code Evolutionaries-5 for 5% off your next order. What's up, Pokemon fans? I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and today I am going to be profiling the deck that I took to the North American International Championships. Now, I know that I've done quite a few Greninja Break decks in the past, but this one is different than any other Greninja Break deck that I have ever made, and also different from pretty much any other Greninja Break that has ever been made. I took a completely different approach to Greninja and put something together that was really all my own. You know, usually you'll find a list and you're like, oh, I like this, but I want to change out a few cards. This time I actually sat down and I said, all right, what can I do to make this amazing Pokemon keep up with the meta and do well in a major event such as the North American International Championships? Overall, I have to say, I'm very satisfied with how I did. I piloted this deck to a 5-2-2 finish. My only losses were to an auto loss, which was Aaron Tarbell playing Decidueye Vileplume. There's just really nothing you can do. Turn 1 Vileplume and 2 Decidueyes in games 1 and 2. You can't fight back against that. It's an auto loss immediately. I can't play my items. I can't deal with the aggressive attacks by Decidueye. Not to only just the feather arrows, but also the attack itself. I'm weak to grass. There's really nothing I can do with that. So my auto loss was there. I did have a somewhat favorable Drampa Garb matchup. However, I played against someone that I couldn't draw any energy. I don't know what happened. Game 1 was kind of rough. Game 2 I should have had easily. I mean, they just started just with a Trubbish. For 3 turns, I had Froakie in the active, Rare Candy Greninja in my hand. I just needed an energy. I drew into 1 supporter, and I didn't hit any energy. And I didn't hit any energy for the next 2 or 3 turns, and I lost game 2. So, unfortunately, those are my 2 losses, and my 2 ties were against this guy. This guy right here. Of course, it would be this guy. I played against a Zoroark Lycanroc version that was really actually very interesting. But Shadow Stitching shuts off the Lycanroc, so I had 1 bad game, and I won the other one, and I was on the way to winning game number 3. I had taken 4 prizes, and I just couldn't finish the job in time, so that one went to tie on that one. The other one, I had game in my hand. I had game in my hand on the last turn of time, but the problem is that during their second to the last turn of time, they had teammates for a Zoroark Break and a Dark Energy to copy my Shadow Stitching to prevent me from shurikening the hurt Zoroark on the bench to knock it out for the last prize. I couldn't do it. I had no way of getting him up. I had no Lysander, VS Seeker, nothing. So I was just stuck in that one. But I had it. I had it. 1 more turn and I would have had it. But unfortunately, that's just the way Pokemon goes sometimes. Maybe if I would have played a little bit differently, maybe, you know, hurried up my opponent, because that was a bit of an issue. Or if, when they were about to call time, I actually had the attack I was about to announce in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. But I heard the announcer and I stopped talking. And if I would have just said Moonlight Slash, they would have been turn 0, and I would have been turn 1, 2, I would have been turn 3. And if I had that, I would have won. But I was turn 2 of time instead of turn 3. So I lost because of that. I tied because of that, I should say. So that's where I went 5-2-2. I beat Lurantis Bulu in round 1. I beat Mega Rayquaza in round number 2. I beat Metagross. I beat Volcanion. And I beat Espeon Garb. So, I mean, I had a really good matchups otherwise. Just a couple of those just didn't go my way, and that's how the game of Pokemon goes sometimes. That's stuff that I just need to work on personally about maybe, you know, telling my opponents, hey, you need to hurry up. You've only got 15 seconds to perform an action. If you don't do it in those 15 seconds, you have a right to tell your opponent to hurry up. I didn't do that, but I'm going to do that starting next season. I'm going to be a little more careful about my play because obviously I'm representing CCG Castle Pro Team now, and I want to make sure that I do the best I can this next season. So, without any further ado, that discussion here about Nationals lasted about 5 minutes, so let's go to the deck profile, which is what you guys came here for. So first we're going to go over the Pokemon. It's pretty standard in the beginning. You're going to be like, okay, all right, Greninja, I get it, but then you'll see. All right, so we start off here with Froakie. Now, Froakie has an attack, Bubble, which actually saved my butt several times. I bubbled to about an 85% success rate. I only flipped 2 tails out of all of my bubbles, so I cannot be mad about that at all. Bubble was clutch. So I play 4 Froakies. Next up here is this guy, Frogadier with water duplicates. Most Greninja decks rely on water duplicates every single game. I only relied on it about maybe 65 to 70% of the time. I have better options in hand sometimes, and you'll see why in a minute. But 4 copies of Frogadier. Next up here, we've got Greninja with Shadow Stitching and Moonlight Slash. 2 very, very good attacks. Shadow Stitching for a single colorless energy does 40 damage, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, each Pokemon that your opponent has in play in his or her hand or in his or her discard pile has no abilities, and that includes cards that come into play on this turn. Then we've got Moonlight Slash for 60, and if you choose to return a water energy to your hand, it does 20 more damage, so it's pretty powerful. We play 4 copies of that Greninja as well. Very standard so far. And also we've got our break here. There you go. Greninja Break, ability Giant Water Shuriken, once turn before you attack. If this Pokemon is in your active, you may discard a water energy, and that hits for 6 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like to a single Pokemon. I shouldn't say any way you like, but it hits to any Pokemon that you want. So that is really, really good. It adds up for great numbers, especially if you've got a Greninja Break active and a Greninja Break on the bench. What you can do is you can Shuriken, switch, Shuriken, and then hit for 80 or more with a Choice Band. So, I mean, 60, 120, 180, 200 damage for a single energy attachment and 2 discards. Then you also have other ways of piling up damage, like, for instance, Choice Band going up even higher to 230. And then also, you know, there's also another card here that'll add another 20 damage as well, which we'll get to here in a minute, making up to 250 damage in 1 turn, which is just nuts. So next up here, we have 1 copy of Tapu Lele GX. This is going to get a supporter out of the deck and play it if you so choose to. I play a lot of one of supporters in this deck, and it turned out to be very, very helpful. Tapu Lele came in very, very clutch, and I never used it for anything but the supporter. I mean, Energy Drive is a thing, but I'm only running Water Energy and Splash Energy, so honestly, Energy Drive just didn't do anything for me, so I never used it. Now, this card right here was the MVP of this entire deck. I was told by so many people, even my own teammates, that I shouldn't play this card. And I didn't listen. And I'm so glad that I didn't listen, because I would have done so much worse without this card. That card is Espeon EX. I use this for its first attack and its first attack only, Miraculous Shine. So what you do for a single energy attachment is devolve each of your opponent's evolved Pokemon and put the highest stage evolution card on it into your opponent's hand. In this format, we're playing with decks with very, very high HP for a GX Pokemon. But there's very low HP Pokemon underneath. So for instance, when you play against something like Vikavolt, okay, you've got Charjabug underneath and you've got Grubbin underneath, but a rare candy leaves just Grubbin underneath. So, you know, and it's the same thing with Beldum, Metang, and Metagross. You have a Metagross with 250, you've got Metang with 90, and you've got Beldum with 60. If you rare candy a Beldum into a Metagross GX, all you gotta do is put a Water Shuriken on it and devolve, and it takes a prize card. It can be devastating, it really can. My Lurantis Bulu matchup, my opponent stacked up 2 Lurantis with 3 energy on each. They were just gonna attack with Lurantis. And I had 60 on this one and 60 on this one. So what I did was, Greninja Break in the active, free retreat. From hand, I go Espeon, attach, retreat, devolve, boom. All of a sudden, there's no energy on board. He was down to 1 prize. I had 6 left. I took 2 prizes, and he was left with a no energy board with 1 card in hand and 1 prize because I end him just before that. So all he did was just brick the rest of the game. And all I had to do was just take out what was left, which was, I think, a Fomantis, an Eevee, and he never put down his Bulu. I'm not sure why, but that was a 48-minute round. So, you know, somewhere around there, because you can't obviously keep time in a game, but it feels like we only went 2 minutes into game 2 and they called time. So I won that one because of Espeon. I took my final prize against Metagross with Espeon. The only prize I took against Decidueye Vileplume was when I Moonlight Slashed onto a Decidueye, and I devolved it down into into Dartrix, which has 80 HP, and I took 1 prize. So I did it that way. Also, it worked really, really well against, trying to think here. Actually, it would have worked against Mega Ray if it wasn't prize. I had 170 HP on both of his Mega Rays, and 170 damage. All I had to do was devolve and knock them out for 4 prizes, but I never got to do it. I tried, but it didn't get there. But I took out many other prizes with Espeon. I took out Eevees from Espeon Garb. I took out, what, 3 Eevees in 1 turn because of this card right here? It was just absolutely crazy how good Espeon EX was in the deck. Very, very impressed with it, very happy with it. I recommend it greatly, at least until the end of the season. All right, enough about Espeon. Let's move on to our supporter count here, which is actually fairly high and fairly abnormal. But first and foremost, unlike most Greninja decks, I chose to play 4 copies of Professor Sycamore to discard my hand and drop to 7, because being N to 1 really sucks. But if you increase your chances of drawing into a Sycamore, you've got 8 chances essentially with VS Seekers and Sycamore itself. Also, you've got Tapu Lele, which means with the 3 Ultra Ball that I play in the deck, that's 11, 12 chances to get a Sycamore. So I really did my best to keep consistency up with that. Also, I played 3 copies of N in the deck. I chose not to play 4 because this deck doesn't really fall behind all that much. If anything, it's actually pretty quick. So having 3 copies of N was pretty close to ideal. I don't think I found myself ever needing another N in the entire tournament. So there's that. 1 copy of Lysander. Again, you're pretty much sniping the bench. Lysander really isn't necessary most of the time, but a single copy is always good for, you know, hitting those numbers the way you want to. So there's that. I think I actually have a little bit of glare going on there, so let me just do that real quick. All right, hopefully that's not an issue. There's that. All right, next supporter here. This was the one I was talking about. Professor Kukui, hitting for an extra 20 damage and drawing 2 cards. An extra draw supporter and also a little bit of extra damage certainly helps. It helped hit some magical numbers with Moonlight Slash hitting for 80. Now it hits for 100 on Garbodors that have Garbotoxin, or Garbodors. Also, it hits Zoroark for 100, if it's not been evolved into Zoroark Break yet. But you can Shadow Stitch, and then you can Moonlight Slash for 100 and knock out a Break if you have to. So either way, it works out. And it did come in clutch a couple of times. I wouldn't say it's a card that I required in the deck, but it definitely came in handy at least once or twice. Next card, Teammates. If one of your Pokemon was knocked out in your previous turn, you can search your deck for 2 cards, put them into your hand. Pretty solid. Computer search basically for your supporter for the turn, and very, very good in Greninja because obviously you're going to get knocked out. You've got Froakies and Frogadiers that are bound to get knocked out pretty easily. Greninja Break can only survive so many hits. Greninja itself can actually be one-shot by quite a few things, but Teammates definitely helps a lot. Next card, Wally. This is where this deck really came together very well. Wally is the other MVP of the deck. I had times where I went second, and I could Wally into Frogadier, or I could Ultra Ball for Lele, grab Wally, go into Frogadier, attach, and water duplicates on my first turn of the game going second. Also, there were at least 1 or 2 times, I think it was only twice, where I had nothing left but Froakies. Promote a Froakie, Rare Candy, Greninja, Wally into the Break, attach, Shuriken, and attack. They don't expect it. They don't expect you to go from Froakie to Break in 1 turn, in the same turn. But it's very possible because of Wally and Rare Candies, which we'll get into here in a minute. But Wally, very, very good in the deck. Single copy of Ace Trainer because it's still a Greninja deck, and Ace Trainer is still a good card regardless. If your opponent has more prize, or taken more prize cards than you, you can play this card, and then your opponent and you both shuffle your hand into your deck. You draw 6, they draw 3. So it slows them down and also helps you at the same time. Last card for supporters is 1 copy of Fisherman. Get 4 basic energy cards, up to 4 basics. If you have less, you can grab all of them into your hand, and from your district pile into your hand. But if you have 4, you have to take 4. So you have to take as many as you can, up to 4, for that card to work. Obviously, you're shurikening away a lot of your energy, so it helps to get that back, and leaves you keeping consistency in key. That's the thing. All right, on to our items. So our very first item in the deck is the very, very familiar 4 copies of VS Seeker. Again, one-of supporters can be used over and over again. You can get them with Lele and then just keep reusing them if you have to. Even if it's just, you know, you got a Lele for a Sycamore or an N, at least you have ways, once your stuff's in the discard pile, to get everything back again and start using it. But this card won't be in format for too much longer. It will be gone unless miraculously it somehow gets reprinted somewhere on down the line, but I can guarantee you we will at least spend the next, once rotation happens, we will at least spend a couple of months without VS Seeker unless it gets a magical reprint. So Greninja's going to lose this card eventually too, but for now we have 4 copies of Dive Ball. Search your deck for a water Pokemon, put it into your hand. Very, very good. I mean, this deck doesn't want to throw stuff out. It never does. So 4 copies of Dive Ball, very, very good. Everything in here is water except for Lele and Espeon, and for that we have 3 copies of Ultra Ball, so that works out. And it also works to get other stuff you need as well. 7 total ball cards. Worked out really well for me, I think. I don't think I found myself ever hurting for Pokemon. The only thing I ever found myself hurting for was energy, which is surprising once you see my energy count. 3 copies of Rare Candy, because Froakie into Greninja is a really good thing, especially late game when you need to recover your Pokemon and start getting yourself back on track again once they start knocking out Greninjas here and there. So Rare Candy, very clutch. So many times I would start Froakie, and next turn I would go Rare Candy Greninja on the bench and evolve into Frogadier, attach, and water duplicates. And I already had 1 Greninja here ready to go into break on the next turn once I evolve this one. Or if I needed to, I would go Rare Candy Greninja on the active and start attacking as quick as possible. So there was also that too. I mean, I didn't water duplicates every single time. I did find myself doing a lot of Rare Candy Greninja and then just building up my bench as the game went along because I was already putting pressure on my opponent. We got 2 copies of Field Blower to blow away things like float stones, choice band. We don't really need to blow away choice bands. Stadiums like Parallel City and things like that hurt Greninja. So 2 copies of Field Blower. There you go. I didn't have any issues with Garb because of Field Blower. So we got 2 copies of Super Rod as well. Shuffle 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile back into your deck. Again, very, very clutch. Super Rod was very good. I'm glad that I put a second one in. I didn't think it was going to matter, but it turned out that 2 Super Rod was the way to go. So that works out really well. Again, going back to those Field Blowers though, you got to make sure that you keep them in hand and play them smart. Because if you find yourself in late game and you need a Field Blower and you can't get one, you pretty much lost. So be very careful with your Field Blowers if you decide to play this deck anymore this season. Next up here we have 2 copies of Choice Band to hit those high GX and EX Pokemon. Doing 30 extra damage is always good. Turns Moonlight Slash into 110. And also with Kukui turns it into 130. So that's really good. It's basically creating 1 and 2 shots on everything in the format, really. Especially with Giant Water Shuriken. I mean, if you Shuriken for 60 and then you Moonlight Slash for 110, you're knocking out Lele's or anything else that has 170 HP. So very solid. Our last trainer card here is a Rescue Stretcher. This is another one that came in pretty clutch. You can choose one of the following options. Put a Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. So, depending on the situation, either way works, and it worked out really well. Alright, so that is it for Pokemon and trainers. Let's take a look at the energy count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 water energy, and 2 splash energy. Splash energy works a lot like a Super Rod would or a Rescue Stretcher would. More like a Rescue Stretcher, but you can put all those Pokemon back into your hand instead of just 1. So splash energy worked really well to keep me recycling Greninja Breaks and Greninjas and Frogadiers and Froakies and all that good stuff. And 7 energy, I really thought would have been enough, but as it turned out, I found myself not hitting energy as well. So my only potential addition to this deck would either be another energy or a Professor's Letter. And if I were to cut anything, I would cut the Kukui for that. So that's probably the only thing I would change about the deck. I would either add another energy or add a Professor's Letter and cut the Kukui. Kukui's good, don't get me wrong, but I didn't find myself in dire need of it or finding it to be super clutch like I did for Wally and Espeon. So you can probably make that choice. Totally up to you though, however you want to play the deck. This version works really, really well 90% of the time. I find it's the most consistent build of Greninja pretty much ever, and without being lucky, I should say. So this deck found a way to come back in a lot of situations where I was down in prize cards, and this deck also took massive leads as well. So pretty strong. I'm happy with it. I love the deck. I played very well, I thought, given the tournament and the field. Beating Lurantis Bulu, highlight for sure. Next favorite highlight was Froakie into break in one turn, Shuriken and attack. I mean, you start with a Froakie and then boom, you're hitting for 120, 130, 140 damage, and I don't remember if I had a choice band or not, but up to 170. Just so good, so good. With my favorite Pokemon too. So this is the deck, guys. Do with it what you will. Again, my only suggestion, Kukui out, put in a letter or an 8th water energy. That's it. That's all I would do, honestly. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this Deck Tech Thursday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below, subscribe for more TCG content, and hopefully I described this deck well enough for you guys. I know this is a really long video, but again, I wanted to get a Nationals recap in there as well, even though we did it during the vlog. So we're going to see what N builds. I have a feeling I know what it might be, but you guys will just have to wait until Thursday to find out, and look forward to Battle Frontier Friday, where we face off next Friday with this deck and the deck that he chooses to build. So with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button, comment, and of course subscribe for more TCG content here on the Pokemon Evolutionaries, and we will see you guys next time. I'm Professor K. You all take care. Have a great day.